Nora stood outside the gate, barefoot, holding her nylon bag like her whole life was inside it. Her lips were dry, but she wasn't crying anymore. There was nothing left to cry about. Madame Flora had shouted and cursed at her, dragged her out like a thief. "You think I won't find out," she kept saying. "You want to scatter my home." Nora kept begging her to listen, but the woman didn't want to hear anything. Then the gate man locked the gate behind her like she had never lived there. Mr. Thomas was standing there too. Nora kept looking at him, hoping he'd say something. Just one word. But he didn't. He just stood there with his hands in his pockets like it had nothing to do with him. That silence was louder than anything Madame Flora said. Nora slowly walked away from the gate, feet burning from the heat. Her legs were shaking, not because she was tired, but because she had no idea where to go. After everything she did for them, this was how they sent her away. Nora was 17 when she came to live with the Thomases. She didn't have parents. She didn't even know the last time she ate a full meal before that. Madame Flora found her sleeping behind her shop one evening, face swollen from mosquito bites. She asked her where she was from, but Nora just looked at the ground. "Can you wash clothes? Can you cook?" Flora asked. Nora nodded. "All right then. Follow me." That was it. From day one, Nora didn't talk much. She minded her business. She woke up before everyone, cleaned the whole house, and made sure their little girl, Bella, was always neat. She didn't have a phone, didn't have friends, didn't even ask for anything. Madame Flora used to tell her friends, "That girl is quiet, but she has sense." And it was true. Nora didn't need anyone to tell her what to do. She just understood. Even Mr. Thomas noticed how peaceful the house had become since she arrived. To people outside, the Thomases looked perfect. Beautiful family, big house, nice cars. But inside, the house was tense. Mr. Thomas barely came home early anymore. Sometimes he wouldn't come home at all. When he did, he was always tired, moody, smelling of perfume that wasn't his wife's. Madame Flora would still serve him food, try to talk to him, but most times he just went straight to the room or sat in front of the TV without saying a word. Nora noticed everything, even though she never said a word. She saw Madame Flora's eyes after crying at night. She heard the arguments through the wall, words like "you don't touch me anymore," and "you think I don't know what you're doing." Their daughter, Bella, was too small to understand, but even she had started asking why Daddy didn't read to her at night anymore. The house was full, but somehow, everyone was alone. That day, Nora was cleaning their bedroom. She moved the bed slightly to sweep under, and that's when she saw it. A folded piece of paper, like someone hid it in a hurry. At first, she wanted to ignore it, but something told her to pick it up. When she opened it, her hands froze. It was a printed email. A woman named Adiz was writing to Mr. Thomas. The message wasn't long, but it said everything. She was pregnant, and she said the baby was his. Nora felt cold. She sat on the floor, staring at the paper, not knowing what to do. Her chest was heavy. She didn't want to get involved, but how could she pretend she didn't see this? Madame Flora had been breaking little by little in that house, and now Nora was holding the very thing that could either help her or destroy her completely. It took her hours to decide. That night, she went to the kitchen and gave her the paper. "Madam, I saw this while cleaning. I didn't want to hide it." Madame Flora didn't even read the letter properly before slapping Nora across the face. "You want to scatter my marriage," she shouted. "You think you'll lie and I won't find out." Nora just stood there, eyes full but not crying. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't move. She only said, "I didn't write the letter, Ma. I only found it." That was the last thing she said before leaving her alone. Hours passed. Nora didn't sleep. Then around midnight, Madame Flora came out of her room and sat beside her in the corridor. She didn't talk for a while. Then she said, "I knew something was wrong, but I kept pretending." Her voice was weak. "Thank you for telling me." That same night, she showed the letter to Mr. Thomas. They fought. For the first time, he didn't lie. He said it happened once, and now the woman was using it against him. It broke Flora's heart, but something about the truth made her breathe again. The house felt like it was floating on silence. Mr. Thomas had stopped talking to anyone unless he had to. He no longer joined them at the table. Sometimes, Nora would see him drive in, stay in the car for over 30 minutes, then drive off again. Madame Flora said nothing. She only carried on like everything was fine. But it wasn't. That night, Nora was in the kitchen, washing plates, when she heard footsteps. She turned around. It was Madame Flora. No makeup, wrapper tied carelessly, eyes red like she'd been trying not to cry. "Nora, sit," she said. Nora slowly dropped the sponge and Saturday. Madame just stared at her for a long time. "I slapped you that day. And you still gave me peace," she said quietly. "I don't even know how to say sorry. But I'm sorry, Nora." Her voice broke. Nora didn't say anything. But when Madame Flora reached out and held her hand, her palm felt cold and shaky. It was the first time Nora saw her truly vulnerable. Everything felt like it was hanging by a thread. Madame Flora was more gentle now, but also more distant. Like she was always somewhere else in her mind. One morning, as Nora helped Bella get dressed for school, the little girl looked up and asked, "Auntie Nora, are you the reason Daddy doesn't sleep here again?" Nora froze. She didn't expect it. "What do you mean?" she asked gently. Bella fiddled with her socks and said, "Daddy told me Mummy is always angry. That he likes being with someone who listens. I asked who, and he said don't worry, you'll meet her soon." That last part stabbed hard. Nora sat on the floor beside her and hugged her tightly. The poor girl was just repeating what she heard, but it shook something in Nora. And from the way Madame Flora quietly picked up her car keys without a word and left for work that morning, Nora knew she had heard everything too. That Saturday, it was hot. Nora was mopping the corridor when the knock came. It was soft but confident. She opened the gate halfway and froze. There she was, the same woman from the letter, Adiz. She had a small handbag on her shoulder and a calm, almost smug look on her face. "Tell Flora I'm here," she said like it was nothing. Nora didn't even blink. She walked in and called Madame Flora, who came out wearing shorts and a tank top, clearly not expecting visitors. Adiz didn't waste time. "I came to make things clear. I'm not here to fight you. I don't want your husband. I only want him to take responsibility for the child." She pulled out a brown envelope and gave it to her. "Everything's in there. DNA isn't necessary. He already accepted the baby's his." Madame Flora didn't even touch the envelope. She just stared at the woman like she was trying to understand what kind of human she was. "You came to my house," she said slowly, "to tell me you slept with my husband and got pregnant, like you're giving me wedding invitation." Adiz adjusted her bag and walked out without another word. But that envelope stayed on the floor, untouched, like a curse. Later that evening, Madame Flora sat in the sitting room, still staring at the envelope like it had a mouth. Nora brought her water but she didn't touch it. After a long silence, Flora looked up and said, "I saw all the signs, Nora. I saw them, but I kept saying no, my own husband can't do that to me." Her voice was calm, but shaky. "I told myself if I just behave, if I just stay strong, maybe he'll come back to himself. But he left a long time ago." Nora sat beside her, unsure if to speak or not. Flora picked up the envelope, opened it and brought out pictures. They weren't even hiding. Him and Adiz, smiling like they had no care in the world. One of the pictures had a baby bump. Another one looked like a baby shower. "She's due in 2 months, Flora whispered. "He didn't even tell me. Not once. I've been sleeping beside a stranger." The next morning was rushed, like every school day. Nora had packed Bella's lunch and was helping her wear her shoes while Flora looked for her car keys. They were almost heading out when Bella suddenly held her head and dropped to the floor. She didn't even scream. Her body started shaking lightly, then stiffened. Flora screamed like someone shot her. Nora rushed over, lifted the child, and held her tightly, begging her to open her eyes. The hospital felt too slow. Nurses ran in and out, doctors asked 100 questions. Nora stood by the wall, praying under her breath. When the doctor finally came out, he pulled Madame Flora aside. "Your daughter is under serious emotional stress. She's not sick. She's overwhelmed. Whatever is happening at home, she's too young to carry it." Madame Flora broke down. Right there in the hallway, she sat on the floor and cried like a child. Nora wanted to hug her, but something told her this was the beginning of something deeper. A crack that was finally tearing open. After Bella was discharged, Madame Flora became someone else. She moved like a machine. She stopped asking about Mr. Thomas. She didn't cry again. She barely spoke unless it was about Bella. Nora noticed she was packing up some of her husband's things quietly, slowly, like she was erasing him from the house one drawer at a time. One evening, as she cleared the wardrobe in the guest room, she found something odd, an old envelope addressed to Flora, in her husband's handwriting. It looked like it had never been opened. Nora was beside her when she opened it. The letter wasn't about love. It was a confession. He had written it 2 years ago. In it, Mr. Thomas confessed to cheating once, not with Adese, but with Flora's closest friend, Jennifer. It was a mistake, he wrote, but I've lived with it every day. She threatened to tell you if I ever left her behind. Flora's hand shook as she read it again and again. Jennifer, her best friend, Bella's godmother. Madame Flora didn't confront Jennifer immediately. She waited. She wanted to see her face first. She called and invited her over for lunch like nothing happened. Jennifer came with a smile, bringing wine like she always did. Ah, you even dressed up, she teased Flora. Nora stayed in the kitchen, but she kept her ear close. They chatted for a while, danced around topics, until Flora placed the letter on the table, between the food. I found this, she said, quietly. Jennifer's face dropped like cold water touched her. Flora, it's not what you think. But Flora didn't even flinch. So what is it then? She asked, her voice calm. Jennifer broke down. She said it only happened once. That he was drunk. That she felt guilty. All the same stories people tell when the damage is done. Flora didn't shout. She just stood up and said, "Get out." Jennifer begged, but it was pointless. The worst kind of betrayal is the one that comes from someone you shared your secrets with. 2 days later, Mr. Thomas returned. He said he was coming to see Bella, but he didn't even bring anything for her. Nora could tell he was hoping to still fix things. Flora didn't argue. She simply sat across the dining table and said, I know everything. About Jennifer. About Adese. About the lies. Mr. Thomas looked stunned for a moment, then laughed like it was nothing serious. Flora, you're blowing things out of proportion. She raised her hand. You don't need to explain. Just listen. I want you out. Today. I'll call the lawyer. We'll figure custody for Bella. I'm not fighting for a man who was never mine in the first place. For the first time, Nora saw real fear in Mr. Thomas' eyes. He stood there, speechless, trying to form words. But Flora had already walked away. She didn't even look back. It was a quiet afternoon. Madame Flora had taken Bella out for a playdate, and Nora was home alone, sweeping the backyard when she heard the gate creak. It was strange, no knock, no shout. Just the sound of metal dragging softly. She wiped her hands and walked to the gate slowly, heart thudding. As she opened it, a man stood there. Tall, mid-30s, dark skin, calm eyes. There was something unsettling about how confidently he looked at her. He didn't smile. You're Nora, he said like he already knew her. She nodded slowly, unsure whether to answer. You don't remember me, do you? She shook her head. The man reached into his pocket and brought out an old, wrinkled photograph. In it, a little girl stood beside a woman, and behind them, the same man, much younger, with his arms folded. That's you. And that's your mother. I'm your father. Nora's breath caught. Her legs felt weak. My father died, she said slowly. That's what they told you, he replied. But I didn't die. I was in prison. Nora didn't know whether to run or cry. Her hands were trembling. Why now? She asked him. Her voice sounded small. Why come now, after all these years? The man sighed, his face tired. Because I just came out. 18 years. I never stopped looking for you. He handed her a small envelope. Everything is inside. My story. What really happened. Who your mother was running from. Who set me up. Nora opened it and saw court papers, prison ID, and a letter addressed to her, in a woman's handwriting. Her mother's name signed at the bottom. Your mother didn't die in an accident, Nora. She was killed, the man said softly. And whoever did it, is still out there. Before she could even respond, a black car parked quietly across the street. The man's eyes shifted. They found me, he whispered. Don't tell anyone I came here. Especially not Madame Flora. Her family, they are not who you think they are. Then he turned and walked away fast. The car slowly followed him down the road. Nora stood frozen at the gate, holding a letter that could break everything she thought she knew. Behind her, the wind slammed the back door shut.